All right, guys, so we are going to export our Photoshop composition and post it on the Open Lab. This is the last video for this week. I know there's a lot of information in the first week, we're almost there. I am going to go into a bunch of detail for this, just so we cover everything. But we'll kind of repeat this process each week, so you get used to it, and I won't go into this much detail each week. So we're going to post our image on the Open Lab. The first thing we're going to do is export our files. I'm going to talk for a minute about what this process looks like and what to look for with the files. And so one thing that we need to kind of keep in mind is file size. I'm going to talk about the different units in files, and then we'll look at what the images look like when we export them. So let me just make some space here, and I'll do a little drawing. Oops. Okay, so we talked about bits and bytes, and so bit is the smallest possible piece of data on a computer. It's a 0 or a 1, and it's just one little switch, and there's billions of them in your hard drive. Next step up, we get byte, and remember from our first lecture, a byte is 8 bits. So that's more information, but it's still a tiny amount. It can represent like a color, maybe a letter. It barely represents any data. So when we save images, they're going to be much bigger than a byte or a bit. So the main way that we kind of talk about file sizes on the computer kind of goes up from there. So most of your file sizes for some of your images are going to be in kilobytes, kilo or kilobyte or kilobyte. This is the prefix kilo means 1,000. So this is 1,000 bytes. So that sounds like a lot of bytes, but for a modern computer, it's 1 kilobyte is a really small amount of information. You can download that almost instantaneously from the internet or wherever. So after kilobyte, we have megabyte. Okay, that's 1,000 kilobytes. So you can see we're kind of going up by large amounts. A megabyte is getting into a little bit of a bigger file size territory. So if you have a megabyte, you can save a pretty big image. You can save like a song maybe with 3 megabytes. You could save an MP3 or something like that. So we're getting into larger file size territory. You could still really easily download a megabyte onto your phone or computer very quickly these days, but it's a little bit bigger. So if you have an image that's like 300K, that's a pretty normal size image for something that you would publish on the internet. I wouldn't really think twice about that. If you had an image that's like 3 megabytes, 3 MB, something like that, I might start to think, maybe I can get this a little smaller so that it'll download faster if it's on, you post it on Instagram, or if it's online somewhere, or if you text it to somebody. After megabyte, we have gigabyte. That's kind of the largest type of byte that we'll talk about. That's 1,000 megabytes. So a gigabyte is like a lot of data. So that might be like a movie might be like a gigabyte or a gig and a half or something like that. So if you downloaded a whole movie, you could imagine that would take a long time, and it would probably be about a gigabyte. If you make like a really complex Photoshop project, it might be a gigabyte. But if you have a Photoshop project that's like the file size is over like 100 megabytes, there's probably something that you might be doing wrong, unless it's like really, really complex. All of this is to say, most of the time in this class, you're not really going to have to worry too much about the file sizes, because the files we're going to be making are going to be relatively small. We're not going to be making full-length movies or videos or anything like that. But it's something to keep aware of. We want to make sure that our files are relatively small so that they load fast, they upload and download fast, and they're appropriate. It's much more important as, if you have a career in multimedia, or if you work on multimedia projects, it's going to become a really big issue, because you want your projects to look good but also work fast. And the more data we use, the better it might look, but the longer it'll take to download and to render and things like that. So that's what we want to think about as we're exporting files. So that's a little overview. Some of that you guys probably already know. You've probably heard those terms before maybe, but just to kind of cover those. So let's export our image and see the different file sizes that we get. Right now, if we go over to our Finder, we have this PSD file. That's our edit file. It's actually quite small. It's only 300 kilobytes. So our images are going to be really small compared to that. And that makes sense because we really haven't put very much into this project. We've only, added a few shapes. So it makes sense that it's not a huge file size. So let's export a few different types of files from Photoshop. So I'm going to make sure this is saved, and then I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export and go to Export As. There's a few different ways to do this, but Export As is probably the best way to do it. This is going to bring up this window. There's a few different things we can look at here. There's 3 basic file settings. There's other types of image files, but these are kind of the main ones. PNG is a little bit like higher quality, but it's also optimized for the web. JPEG is more sort of generic. Most images are going to be JPEG images. It's going to be a lower file size, but it may be not as good quality. And then GIF, we're not going to use. We will make an animated GIF later in the semester, so we'll use it then, but we're going to ignore it for now. So let's look at a little bit at the difference in quality, and hopefully we'll be able to see this. So one of the things that's nice about Photoshop is it has this 2-up section where you can compare how these images are going to look. So here we have a PNG. If we export this as is, it'll be 5 kilobytes. That's really small. That's a good file size. Makes sense. It's only a few colors. And if we zoom in on this, we're going to see the quality is really pretty much very good. Like there's crisp lines, bold colors. It looks pretty good. If we go to this window and we switch the format to JPEG, so far it still looks pretty good. But if I set the quality setting, notice what happens is we get these artifacts. So one of the ways that images and other types of media save space is by compressing the files. When you compress a file, you basically take the data that's there and find ways to make it smaller. So if lots of pixels are the same color, instead of saving all of those pixels, you just save the color and then say where to go. The funny thing here is this JPEG is actually larger file size than the PNG, and that's because we're not using a lot of colors. When we use images with lots of colors from a photograph, with lots of different pixel data, we'll see there's that kind of relationship swaps. But as far as just blocks of color, PNG is actually much better at saving this. Let's see if we put the JPEG up to full quality. It's 34K, so that's pretty big because it's saving all these pixels. It's a different way of doing it. So PNG is going to be better for this type of image where there's just like lots of big blocks of color. We don't need transparency, so we can turn that off. That didn't actually affect anything, so it doesn't really matter. You can also scale here. So if you don't need your image to be that big, you could set the scale to 50%, and that gets the image size even smaller. We'll leave it at 100% because it's already a very small image. We'll continue to look at this. These are just some of the basics, but when we do our composite image next week, we'll have a much larger file size, and so we'll be able to do more with this. So I'm going to export this as a PNG, and I'll just save it into my image folder, and I'll just leave it, the name is abstract, and there we go. And let's export it as a JPEG as well, just so we can see if they look different. So we'll go to export, export as, I'll switch this to JPEG, and it's funny, it really is so much bigger. Let's just export it. It's still 26K, it's not very big. So I'm going to save that. So I can actually name these all the same thing because they have different file endings. So there's PSD, JPEG, PNG. If you're on Windows, you may not see these file extensions. You can change your view settings to show file extensions. I can go over how to do that, but if you Google, Windows show file extensions, it's pretty easy to do. It's kind of important for this class to know what type of files we're looking at. In Windows, you may, if you look at the icons, you may be able to tell what type of file it is. It may show like a big, Photoshop icon or something like that. So Windows is going to look a little bit different here. But you just want to make sure that you are looking at the right file types. The differences between these files, so JPEG and PNG, these are exported files. These are like published files. We can put them on the internet. People will be able to look at them. PSD, we cannot publish on the internet. If you try to publish it on our blog, you're just not going to, it's just not going to let you. The reason for that is that PSD has a lot of other information in it. If I open this PNG, if I go to open with Photoshop, you're going to see the difference is it's just one layer and everything is smushed together, as opposed to the PSD where I can still see all my layers. I can turn stuff on and off. I can make changes and I can save it and go back and edit it later. So that's the difference between an edit file and an exported file. The edit file I can continue to make edits to. The export file is sort of a finished product, but it's something I can publish out in the world. So let's go ahead and do that. We have our images now. So we'll go to the Open Lab. So I'm going to go to the browser. I'm logged in right now. I'll log out so you'll see what it looks like when you're logged out. So if you haven't used the Open Lab yet, you're going to have to create an account. So you're going to go to sign up, and that's going to make you log in with your BMCC email address. So this is different than what we did with Photoshop. That's the CUNY one. This is the BMCC one. So it's going to be, your first name, last name, and the 2 digits, but at bmcc.cuny.edu, not the login one. Anyway, if you have issues with that, just let me know. We can go over it. It actually just automatically logged me in because the browser saved my information. But let's go to an incognito window real quick, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. So if you go here and go to sign up, it's going to take you to this. It's going to ask you to sign in, and you're going to see, the at bmcc.cuny.edu. So just fill that out, sign in. If you have any issues with that, let me know. Once you are on the Open Lab, I'm going to close this and just click on the Open Lab link again. You're going to need to join the class to get permission to post. So there's a button right here on the main, on the homepage of the Open Lab. If you click that, it's going to take you back to the Open Lab site. WordPress is like a website that's created by the Open Lab. It's a little bit confusing, but don't worry about it right now. When you open this page, you're going to see a button here that says join. Mine says clone the course because I created it, but yours is just going to say join. When you click join, it's going to add you as a member down here. So you can see there's me. And everybody, will get filled in here. So just click join and you'll get added there. When you go back to the Open Lab and you refresh the page, you will now see this toolbar at the top. This is the WordPress toolbar. WordPress is just a publishing platform that the Open Lab uses. WordPress is actually a very popular publishing platform. If we Google WordPress, let's see, usage. Okay, so according to AI, WordPress is 43% of all websites. So that's a lot of websites. So it's a good thing to know about even, outside of this class. And let's see, they're getting that from a WP Zoom. So I don't know if we can 100% trust that statistic because I think it's published by WordPress. But it is definitely a lot of websites that use WordPress. Okay, let's get rid of that. So once you get this toolbar, you'll be able to create your own posts. So let's see. So let's add a post. So if you hover over this plus button, you can see there's 3 types of things that you can create. But if you just click the plus button, the default is post. So you can just do that. And it's going to bring you to the editing page. Yours might look a little bit different. There's a few different things that you can change here. So for example, you might see, I actually don't see this anymore. Maybe they got rid of it. Sometimes there's like a summary thing that pops up here at the bottom. You don't want to edit that. You can just ignore that. You don't need any of these pop-ups down here. You can just ignore those. The things that we're going to edit are like in this sort of like editing page, like the title and these blocks. It's also asking us to choose a category. There's a menu over here, this little side menu. and that's where you can do some other settings. So on the post, there's a category setting. And for this one, you can see there's categories for the different things that we're going to be working on. So this is a weekly blog post, and it's also an image blog post. So you can tag it with a couple categories that'll make it nice and organized. And once you do that, that red bar goes away, and so you'll be able to publish. So let's add a title. We'll say abstract composition. If you have a name for your composition, feel free to use the name. And then we're going to add our image here. So there's a couple ways to do that. One way to do it is to click on this plus button and find the image block. If you don't see the image block there, just type image. It'll show up. But we can add the image block, and then you can upload an image to the blog. So I'll click upload. I'll go to my desktop, and I'll go find my image. And I'll click open. So remember, you can't use the PSD here. It won't let you embed the PSD. But if you use the PNG or the JPEG, it'll let you put it in there. So next we want to make just a little short description. So you can click down here below, and you can just start typing. So I can say, for my abstract composition, I used the rectangle tool and blending modes to make a cool color scheme. So just talk about, what your concept was. It's just a sentence or two, but I just want you guys to kind of explain what you were going for, and, any other information that you want to talk about. When you're writing these posts, you should be writing for a general audience. So one of the things that we want to work on when we're communicating about our projects is how to kind of explain to somebody who doesn't necessarily know what they're looking at, like why they're looking at it. So you should think about like a general audience person. You shouldn't think about me. Like you shouldn't include information in here that would be more appropriate to email me. Like if you're saying like, I spent 10 hours on this and I couldn't figure out where the right tool was, that's not really relevant for this post. If you're having that type of issue, you should just contact me directly. For this post, you just want to explain what your idea was, and anything that might be interesting about, why you wanted to make it. So it's just for a general audience. It's for, anybody who might be reading this to understand what your goals were. Okay. So I think that's everything. We can publish it. It makes you click publish twice. And then once you publish your post, this will take a second. You can click view the post, and this will be live on the blog. So if you go to posts, you can see there's me, there's my abstract composition. And if I click on my blog author name, I'll be able to see all of my posts together. So that's kind of fun, and we'll be able to look at each other's posts, and I'll do some review and critique. You can also, I can't do it because I made this, but you should be able to comment. I'll have to double check and make sure comments are turned on, but you should be able to comment. Oh no, I have to go into the post itself. There it is. So you can leave comments on the posts, and that's one of the main ways that we'll do interaction in the class is you guys can give each other feedback, constructive criticism or positive feedback. If you like something, you can say that looks really cool. If you thought something was interesting and you wanted to know how they did it, you could write that in a comment. If you think you have like some interesting suggestions for things that they could do to improve their work, as long as you do it in a positive manner, that's another thing that you could do there. So now our post is published, and we're going to submit it on Brightspace. So as I mentioned in a previous video, all the grading happens on Brightspace, so it can be done privately, so only you see your grades. So that's the one last step, is you're going to copy the link that you created. So I'm just going to grab that link and hit Command-C or Control-C to copy. When you publish, you can also edit the post. So there's an edit button right here. You could go back and make changes if you want to. And you'll also see the link for the post. Let's see, where is the link? Published. Huh, there should be a link here. Let's see. Oh, here it is. It's under slug. That's a little bit different than I remember. But anyway, you can see it right there. That's the link. So you can copy that if you need to. And then we're going to submit that on Brightspace. So now I'm going to go over to Brightspace. This is the last step here. So I'm going to go to assignments. And I'm going to find this assignment here, blog post number 1. Oops, I have to go into learner view. Okay, so now I'll go to assignments, go to blog post 1. Double check the rubric, so make sure that you did everything that's listed in the rubric. If you have any questions, let me know. And you're going to paste the link to the post here. I'm just going to click on it and look at it in the blog. You don't need to write anything here or submit, resubmit your images or anything like that. But the one thing you do have to do is submit your Photoshop file. So you can go to add file, go to my computer and click upload. And I'm already here, but you can go find your project folder, go find your PSD file. This has to be a PSD file. If you submit your JPEG or your PNG, I'm just going to ask you to resubmit. So make sure this is a PSD file, click add, and then click submit. And I'll go through these steps, as we do all of our assignments, but I won't go into quite as much detail. So since this is the first thing that we're going to submit, I'm going to a little more detail here. You can resubmit if you need to. So if you make a mistake, just do a new submission. That's fine. It'll let you do as many submissions as you need to. And I'll be able to review it. I'll give you a grade. I'll just kind of check off, did you do all these things? If I have any comments, I'll include them there. But that's pretty much, for the blog post, it's really just, did you do it or not? It's not so much about the quality of the work. That comes later when we submit our projects. Okay, so let's check our rundown. Okay, yep, we did everything. All right, so let me know if you guys have any questions, but that's pretty much what we're going to be doing this week. So I know there's a lot of video content for this week. Going forward, it's going to be much less. There's a lot less that we have to introduce. So we'll just be focusing more on the content as we go. So anyway, let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.